Make way for Mr. Speaker.
I invite Elder Shirley Alphonse of the Sauk Nation to lead the House in prayer or reflection.
Creator, Great Spirit, thank you for today as we gather here in the Legislature, together with the chiefs and council and community members of our Haida Gwaii Nation, to celebrate and stand with them as they move forward in self-governance. May your community know success in all endeavors. May your community be of one mind, one spirit, in all that you do for the sake of your people, for the sake of your children to the 7th generation, so that they inherit a Haida Gwaii that thrives in peace and harmony with one another and with Mother Earth. And Mother Earth, who holds all the goodness and blessings of the waters, the lands, the mountains, the forests, the creatures of land, sea, and sky in Haida Gwaii. May the ancestors smile down on you today and every day as the governing body of Haida Gwaii, as you look after your people, your land, and your place on earth, and the good and gentle footprints you leave for the children to follow.
Introductions by members. Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, it's with great pleasure that I invite our government caucus team at the Attorney General's office, who are up here somewhere. They really are a dream team. It's Preet Garol, Michael Cox, Tara Syracuse, John O'Dowd, Nicole Hall, Catherine Pate. Just want to thank you for all the work that you do.
Minister of State for Infrastructure and Transit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two introductions to do today. My senior administrative assistant, Ebony Rindall, who's joined by her sister in the gallery. Ebony started her career in government in 2021 as the administrative assistant in social development and poverty reduction, where she was the direct administrative support for myself as Parliamentary Secretary for Accessibility and the Parliamentary Secretary for Community Development and Nonprofits. Ebony has a passion for inclusion and is always trying to find ways to make those around her feel welcome. With her is her sister, Misty Olson, who is joining us in the gallery for the very first time. Last year, Misty was elected as a councillor for the City of Colwood. Not only is she serving her community supporting their mayor, but she has been busy supporting the community in Victoria for over a decade, from program coordinator for the BC Restaurant and Food Services Association to past festival productions around the city. You may also find her curating dream weddings at Langtree Walk in Saanich. So if the House would please make Misty and her sister Ebony welcome to the House.
Our Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise today and welcome guests from the Haida Nation and the Haida Recognition of Title team, some of whom are with us in the gallery and others who are in the precinct and will join us later on the floor. I'd like to welcome Gogwis, Jason Alsop, who is, of course, President of the Haida Nation, Jin Woodloo Un Ula Isa Da Gwailam, who is Trevor Ross, Vice President of Haida Nation, Stihilda Frank Collison, Gahuli Lonnie Young, Gitkun Reg Young, and Idansu Jim Hart, Kiltlutsku Peter Lanton, who's past president of the Haida Nation, and the elected representatives who are with us, Lanas, Tamara Davidson, Gideon Judd, Erica Reed, and Ku Aswi Hulal Gedak, Lisa Hageman, Gumki Young Stlu, Don Edgars of Old Masset Village Council, and Nungki Higu Gordon Mills of the Skidegate Band Council. Finally, I'd like to welcome Jees Gung, who is Nika Collinson, and Tidal Cohen Iceberg. To all members of the Haida Nation who have joined us, we thank you. Hawa.
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In the gallery, I noticed a good friend of mine and a friend of Labour, friend of working people in this province. A delegation from Unifor is here, led by, as I said, a good friend of mine, Gavin McGarrigle. They are here to talk to us. We met with the Premier yesterday, myself and the Minister of Forest, and they brought issues that are important not only to their members but all British Columbians. And I just want to say thank you for raising those issues and helping make not just the working people, the members of yours, but every working person here and lift their the health and safety and working conditions better. So please join with me and give them a very warm welcome.
Member for Burnby North.
Speaker. I'd like to introduce Johnny Sobachuk. He is an accomplished union organizer, community organizer, and campaign organizer. He's a creative artist and a creative thinker, and I'm proud to call him my friend. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome.
Minister of Children and Family Development.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Today in the gallery we have joining us Bryant Doradea. He's an artist, grassroots activist, youth worker, former Youth from Care, and was also a member of the Ministry's Youth Advisory Council. Bryant is also known by his hip-hop alias HK, which stands for Higher Knowledge. And he's going to be doing a performance today in the Library Gathering Place in honour of upcoming BC Child and Youth in Care Week. His performance of the Foster Kids Survival Guide is for all interested members, and I'd invite you all to come. It's going to start at noon, and it's really, really fantastic. Joining Bryant in the gallery are members of our ministry staff and the Youth Advisory Council team, Renee Basie and Connie Epp. Would everybody please help me in welcoming them here today?
Minister of State for Childcare.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Joining us today in the gallery is the GCPE team for childcare. As I mentioned, it's Childcare Month, and as we celebrate educators and providers, I also want to celebrate and thank everyone at the ministry for all that they do to make childcare more accessible and affordable to families in BC. And thank you to this team for helping us connect with families and providers and educators and communities. Will the House please join me in making them welcome?
Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I have two introductions to make today. Again, joining us in the House and up in the gallery are members of the Vancouver Foundation Level Youth Policy Program. Arsh Graywal and Amora Takovira are here again with two more of the Youth Policy team, Wei Chun Kwa and Yara Yunus. Would the House please make them most welcome? And I have a very special introduction to make as well. In the gallery today is Oat Ta Kinjad. Rose Williams, who is my constituency assistant, and is here as a Haida woman and a Haida artist to witness the Haida Recognition Act. Rose is extraordinary in so many ways, and one of them is that just last week, when we knew that I'd be speaking publicly on Red Dress Day, staff reached out to Rose, and in the space of 2 days, she made this beautiful red dress. She beaded it herself and gifted it to me on Wednesday. Rose is an incredible artist, an incredible writer, and an incredible human being. And I'm so grateful to know her.
Member for Nelson Creston.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Today in the gallery, I have two guests. I have Lauren Merva and Adam Sutherland from the Nelson Police Department. Not everyone knows that Nelson has our own municipal police force. It's 126 years old. And this morning I got to meet with Lauren and Adam, and we talked about some of the challenges that the police force is facing, but also some of the opportunities. And I'm really grateful for the work that they do to keep our community safe, and I really appreciated the conversation this morning. So thank you for joining us, and will everyone make them feel welcome, please?
Minister of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. A little bird told me that we may have some guests in the gallery here today from GCPE, Government Communications and Public Engagement Team. Crystal Thompson, Amy Harper, Dave Paulson, Aaron Hinks, Octavian Lakutusu, and Patrick Newman. I don't know if they are here, but if they are here, I hope the House will please join me in making them feel very welcome.
Member for Langley East.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Today is a very special day in my home. 20 years ago today, I gave birth to the most wonderful, kindest, and most compassionate son you could have. My son AJ's birthday is today, and I'm so incredibly proud of him, and I'm wondering if the House could please join me in wishing him a very happy birthday.
Member for North Coast.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I just want to echo the Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation's welcome and introduction to the House of all the Haida members, which are all across British Columbia. But as the MLA for North Coast that has the pleasure of representing the people of Haida Gwaii, it's a really special day for me, not just because we are recognizing in colonial law, which is inherent and has been forever in Haida law, but also because I have never had, in 10 years of being an MLA, 10 years today, in fact, of being an MLA, I have never had this many constituents in Victoria at the same time, ever. And I am ecstatic. So welcome. Hawa. Hawa.
Madam Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Opposition House Leader.
I move that the bill entitled the Control of Foreign Funding and Electoral Influence Act, of which notice has been given in my name on the order paper, be introduced and read for the first time now. Honourable Speaker, recent events have put a spotlight on the significant threat of foreign influence on the integrity of elections, democratic institutions and processes. We have witnessed numerous instances of foreign influence in politics, both locally in British Columbia and around the world. When these types of concerns go unaddressed, public trust and confidence in our democratic systems can be eroded, leading to divided communities and increased social tension. Therefore, to protect the democratic process, we must modernize and strengthen our Election Act laws, ensuring that they are up to date and effective in combating foreign influence in BC politics. Disappointingly, there were gaps in this government's recent amendments to the Election Act. Two recommendations in particular from Elections BC, both of which related to the issue of foreign interference, were not included in these most recent amendments. The bill I am introducing today will prohibit foreign-funded individuals and organizations from making false or misleading communications for any purpose related to an election. It will also ban contributions from any foreign person, government, or political organization for any purpose related to an election, and prohibit any individual or organization from collaborating with or accepting funds from foreign entities in order to influence an election. Honourable Speaker, transparency is a fundamental element of a strong democracy. When people are unsure of the truth, it breeds fear and mistrust. A fair and proper review of this matter in a transparent way is essential to maintain the public's trust and protect the values we all hold dear. It's time for us to work together to ensure that political power remains firmly in the hands of British Columbians and that we can effectively safeguard our democracy from the influence of foreign entities.
Members, the question is the first reading of the bill. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member.
I move that the bill be placed on the orders of the day for second reading at the next sitting of the House after today.
You have heard the question. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Madam Clerk.
Statements by members.
Member for Kelowna Mission.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Well, today I rise in the House to recognize the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, which is celebrated every year on May 17th. This day is an important opportunity to raise awareness about the ongoing discrimination, violence, and marginalization faced by lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, or questioning, and two-spirit individuals, and all of those with diverse sexual orientations, gender identities, expressions, and sex characteristics. It is significant to note that May 17, 1990 was the day that homosexuality was declassified as a mental disorder by the World Health Organization. Since then, after a global campaign, the first International Day Against Homophobia was celebrated in 2004, and it is now celebrated in more than 130 countries. This year's theme is Together Always, United in Diversity, which highlights the importance of solidarity, community, and allyship across different identities, movements, and borders. It is a message that resonates with the ongoing struggles and achievements of the LGBTQ+ community. As a society, we have made progress towards equality and acceptance for LGBTQ2S+ individuals, but we still have a long way to go. We must continue to advocate for equal rights and ensure that nobody feels discriminated against simply because of who they are. On this day and every day, it is important to create a platform for LGBTQ2S+ people to share their stories and experiences. We must listen to them and amplify their voices so that we can work together towards a better future for everyone. On behalf of the BC United Caucus, I reaffirm our commitment to work hard to make homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia a thing of the past and strive for a province where everyone can feel safe and comfortable being themselves. Thank you.
Member for Boundaries, Milkameen.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I start with a quote from Danielle Rubart and her colleagues. Federal policies and programs are typically written with place-neutral intent or without considering how they might affect places differently depending on population compositions or geographic contexts. On average, rural areas are older, sicker, and poorer and have weaker healthcare infrastructures than urban areas. We should anticipate that place-neutral policies would impact health and aging differently in rural versus urban areas. Our rural and remote communities are not little Vancouvers, and most don't want to be, nor are we beholden to only forests, farms, fish, or oil and gas or minerals to be the definition of our identities. Our rural communities will always be leading the charge with innovation in the natural resource sectors and in securing more value from those raw products that fuel our province. But they are rapidly becoming more diverse socially and economically and have grand visions for what they want to become. The unintentional status quo of this place in creating place-neutral policies is creation of policy that is inordinately informed by metro realities, which is why it's so important to see shifts like that announced by Shannon Salter, Deputy Minister to the Premier, earlier this year, that effective April 1st, all job postings will be open to people in any BC community where the hiring ministry has an office, and any restrictions will require Deputy Minister approval. This isn't just a win for our public service, for personal employment flexibility. It's a win for our ability to ground truth our policy development process in a more representative cross-section of BC, and it's a win for rural resiliency. For wine policy, for example, understanding the realities of place is enormously important, as Leslie at Noble Ridge knows all too well. This internal change is one of the 8 key opportunities identified by the BC Rural Centre as a way to help support rural communities. It matters for people, for policy, and for resilient rural economies, and we're getting it done. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Member for Cariboo-Chilcotin.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Economic Development Week is an annual event that runs from May 8th to 12th and celebrates the importance of economic development in communities right across British Columbia. This event aims to raise awareness of the important role that economic development plays in creating jobs, attracting investment, and promoting sustainable growth in our province. During Economic Development Week, businesses, community organizations, and government agencies come together to showcase their successes and collaborate on strategies to foster economic growth in the regions. Unfortunately, small businesses in British Columbia are facing significant challenges these days, keeping their doors open as they face a mixture of barriers that are slowing them down. Small businesses are particularly vulnerable to property crime, which can include theft, vandalism, and break-ins. These crimes not only cause financial losses for businesses, but they can also lead to the loss of confidence in the local business community. This is why it's so important that we support small businesses in British Columbia by taking steps to prevent property crime and supporting them in their recovery from these incidents. Economic Development Week is a great opportunity to learn more about our local businesses and help them explore options to increase their revenue. There are many workshops and webinars that are available for the public to learn more ways to retain employees, attract businesses, and utilize their community. By supporting small businesses in British Columbia, we can help ensure that they continue to play a vital role in driving economic growth, creating jobs in the province. As we celebrate Economic Development Week, let us also remember the importance of supporting these small businesses that make our communities extremely strong and vibrant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Burnaby North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Union Cooperative Initiative was launched last year to bring together the labour and cooperative movements to promote economic development through shared community-focused values. The UCI is supported by Van City Credit Union and the Alliance for Cooperative Development. BC has a long history of collaboration between unions and co-ops. Helena Gutteridge, Vancouver's first woman city councillor and a union organizer, helped create a toy-making co-op in 1914. Japanese and Indigenous fishing co-ops were early sustainable BC enterprises. Today, the UCI serves as an incubator and developer. Value Co-op was UCI's first initiative. It was launched in 2020 at the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic to provide living wage work for freelance arts and cultural workers. Scoop, the Stitchers Co-op, was launched by costume workers in the theatre sector to make flexible fabric masks and other soft goods. Seize the Means of Production Film Co-op provides high-quality film and creative services to value-aligned organizations. One of its newest ventures is the Community Fitness Co-op that provides at-home training to clients around Burnaby. In the words of Managing Director Johnny Sopachuk, the union cooperative model provides tools for communities to combat pressing issues of our time: income inequality and workplace alienation, racism and discrimination, climate change. So far, UCI has launched seven union cooperatives in partnership with the BC Federation of Labour, IATSE Local 891, Arts and Cultural Workers Union, and Move Up. Another 10 are in development. Their Union Co-op Development Centre recently opened in Chinatown and will become a hub for worker-focused community economic development, labour organizing, and co-op incubation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Courtenay East.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Today I want to take the time to speak to our greatest natural resource that we have here in the province, and that is of our young K-12 students, and more specifically our graduating classes across the province. In Kootenay East, I would like to mention the 6 graduating classes of 2023. The smallest but perhaps mightiest class will be from Kootenay Discovery School in Fernie with 9 wonderful graduates. Kootenay Educational Services, or KES, will have 13 bright and promising students walk out their doors this year. Elkford Secondary has a graduating class of 28 in a city that is wild at heart. Sparwood Secondary inches out Elkford this year with 29 eager students ready to take on the world. Fernie Secondary is proud to produce 81 grads that are as beautiful as the city itself. And Cranbrook's Mount Baker, my alma mater, boasts 248 hardworking and fun-loving graduates this year. To make things extra special this year, Mr. Speaker, my daughter, Ali Jade Nora Shapitka, will be one of those 408 names that will be finishing their secondary education in the coming weeks, and I couldn't be more prouder. Time flies like an arrow, Mr. Speaker, and it seems bittersweet for me to see my daughter finish this part of her life that my wife and I seem to be in so much control of. I know she's about to embark into a phase of her life that is independent of her parents, and as she takes on the world as a strong, intelligent, beautiful woman that she has become. Life will be scary sometimes, but at other times will be full of accomplishments, love, and newfound joy. Words of advice, if I may. Live your own life. Don't compare your beginnings to somebody else's middle. Be positive. Do things that you are uncomfortable with. Appreciate moments with those you love. Less stuff equals more freedom. Help others. Build a budget. Love yourself before loving anyone else. Believe in yourself, and most of all, have fun and don't let life pass you by. To my favorite daughter, my most beautiful daughter, my most intelligent daughter, my only daughter, congratulations to you and the 407 grads of 2023 in Kootenay East. You made it.
Member for Vancouver West End.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. This last weekend in the West End, we celebrated Arts in the City. It's a long-standing festival put on by the West End Community Centre Association, a celebration of visual arts and pottery. Indeed, you can find me drinking my morning coffee every day from a mug that I purchased right there. Now, that's not the only Centre for Arts in the West End. Of course, just outside the doors, you'll find the John Ferry murals on just about every wall of that centre, including a small piece put up by my own son. Very good artist, I must say. Up the street, you'll find Mole Hill, and where we have the Mole Hill Gallery, Mole Gallery, featuring artwork from local artists most every weekend. Down the road, you've got Gordon House, where I'm really proud to say they've taken on work with Keith Spence. Now, Keith is a Squamish Nation artist, and this last summer, he engaged the community to carve the very first house post in the West End in over 100 years. And this summer, there's more work to come, and I can't wait to help announce it. Now, going beyond there, of course, over in Cole Harbour, we have the Performing Arts Lodge with its resident theatre company, Western Gold. Every night, most summers, most winters, most every night, you'll find incredible artwork there from the theatre artists in the community. We got Rhodey House with its history museum, Davy Village, where, of course, you'll find drag performed just about every single night. And then if that's too much for you, you can pick up a book from Ronsdale Press. One of the ones I'm reading currently is about the late great MLA and late great Nishka leader Frank Calder. Now there's playwrights, there's performers. You turn on the TV, you look it up on Netflix, you'll see West End artists on our screens as well. So I just want to say, please join me in celebrating the arts. They are what make us who we are, celebrating the artists and all those who help artists thrive. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Madam Clerk. Member for Courtenay Comox.
Speaker, I seek leave to make an introduction.
Is leave granted? Aye. Proceed.
Thank you. I'm really excited to see yet more students coming into the gallery today from home. They'll be in here momentarily, so I wanted to get it out now. They're grade 5 students. There's 23 of them coming from, once again, Quinish. I think there's a bug going around in that school. It's a good one that I'd like to see spread further. Miss Monroe, better known as Miss Catherine, is here, and Ms. Thygesen. They have the Montessori kids from grade 4 or 5, and later we'll be having some more students from their class coming in. So please, may the House please welcome them and give them a reason to come back. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday we received confirmation of the Premier's horrific mismanagement of BC Housing, the Crown Corporation tasked with providing housing to those most in need. This total mismanagement occurred while the Premier was directly responsible for BC Housing, but clearly was asleep at the switch. Yet to believe the Premier, no one at the political level is responsible. Not the member for Coquitlam-Millardville when she was the minister responsible, not the Premier when he was the minister responsible. He takes no responsibility. But I remind you, Mr. Speaker, that the Premier was the one that made the Treasury Board submissions for the $90 million that he secured for Atira without financial reviews being in place and despite multiple damning reports outlining the misuse of taxpayer dollars. So my question for the Premier, why did the Premier more than triple the funding to Atira at the same time he buried reports that were suggesting exactly the kind of gross financial mismanagement we're only finding out?
Government House Leader.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Well, we're responsible for the report that was just released to the public, the first time in BC's history released without redaction so the public can see the challenges. Honourable Speaker, we take this responsibility very seriously. Now, I think it's important for those watching at home to have the context of the steps that were taken. Premier became the minister responsible for housing. He saw some issues that concerned him. He went to the Office Controller General. He actually brought in EY. They made recommendations last year on things BC Housing can do to ensure that there's greater oversight of projects. Those things, many of them have been done and many are more under progress. But they also identified some specific new challenges or new issues that they felt was needed further investigation. And that's what the Premiers took the next steps on, was to bring EY in, as was highlighted yesterday. A team flew in from Toronto to look at this new information. Now, the information is clear that the former CEO, Mr. Ramsey, and the CEO of Atera, who are married, saw some additional benefits because the former CEO was pushing staff to send more contracts and more dollars to Atera at the expense of others. Now, Honourable Speaker, we all agree in this House that rules must be followed. It's unacceptable behaviour. That's why I felt strongly that this report, the information that was made available to us, needed to be made public. Now, it's important for everyone in this House to know that around 2020, we were in a pandemic. There were additional dollars required for the not-for-profits to support the most vulnerable people in this province. Now, what is unacceptable and what the report highlights was that the decisions made by then the CEO of BC Housing to direct award contracts to Atera and not make them available for other not-for-profits is unacceptable. It's wrong. We all agree on that in this House. But what was vital during the pandemic, what's vitally important, was that we supported the most vulnerable people, and that's what we did, Honourable Speaker.
Leader of the Official Opposition, supplemental.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is possibly the most ridiculous amount of spin I have ever seen on a subject that this government is entirely responsible for. So let's have some context. It actually goes back to 2018 when BDO, an accounting firm, came out with a scathing report on the mismanagement and carelessness with taxpayer dollars that was taking place at BC Housing Corporation and at Atira. What did the NDP do with that report? They buried it for 4 years. It was only when this opposition brought it forward that finally we started to find out that there was huge problems there. So what was the Premier's response? He initially said he hadn't seen the report. He wasn't aware of it. The next day, apparently his memory was refreshed. Now he had some familiarity with the report. But that was only after he had BC Housing draft a press release saying, oh, that's all been taken care of. That was all old news that we've all taken care of. That was not the case. The BDO report found incorrect, incomplete, misleading information. And yet, during this entire time, we saw more reports come out. Now we had the Ernst & Young report come out, which the Premier, then the Housing Minister responsible, quietly posted on the Friday evening of a long weekend. Imagine that. That's the NDP's idea of transparency. Then the following Friday, what does he do? He fires the entire NDP-appointed board. That's the transparency from this government, this NDP government. And then after firing the board, the Premier's response is, it had nothing to do with any suggestion of impropriety whatsoever. Nothing to see here, folks. That's the message that the Premier and the NDP have been giving the public. And we know now that that was not true. It is a damning pattern of evasion and misleading and not being straight up with the public. And you owe a duty to the public to stand up right now and come clean about the fact, Mr. Speaker, that $90 million by this current Premier went before Treasury Board that he brought forward. Why was he more than increasing the funding by over 300% at the same time he was sitting on reports that showed the damning amount of misuse of public funds?
Mr. Speaker, Honourable Speaker, transparency is when you have a report like this to make it public without reduction. That's transparency. Honourable Speaker, it's not ripping pages out of a report. It's not ripping pages out of a report, which we've seen. Honourable Speaker,
members.
It's not triple deleting emails. That's not what it is, Honourable Speaker. This is not documenting things on post-it notes, Honourable Speaker. This is seeing a report that's clearly in the public interest and releasing it for the first time in BC's history under Freedom of Information Act, Honourable Speaker. That's transparency. Now,
members.
That level of transparency is shameful. Maybe the member will have a question, and I'm happy to answer that. Now, the member talks about a BDO report. That report was made by the board at the time. It was not made available to the minister at the time. The board made a decision that they felt at that time it didn't need further action. Now,
Members, let the minister answer, please. Members will come to order. Please continue.
Now, Honourable Speaker, I think it's a fair comment for the public to ask that since 2012, there's been news stories about this. In fact, in 2012, there was a report asking the minister at the time around conflict of interest, because, by the way, this relationship started in 2010. At the time, Minister Coleman said, I can assure you that everything was done that had to be done, and then some. They were very cautious about it. And so, Honourable Speaker, I think now we reflect back to those news stories and think, why weren't steps taken earlier? I can assure the members...
Members, please. Minister will continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I can assure the members of this House and the public that when the Premier saw something inappropriate, he took action, Honourable Speaker, just like he did with like he did with money laundering, just like he did with ICBC, just like he did with BC Lottery Corporation, Honourable Speaker. That's the type of public transparency that we provide on this side.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We now have a better idea for all the British Columbians watching today. We now have a better idea why the Canadian Association of Journalists calls this the most secretive government in Canada. Oh, they're so transparent. They only sat on this latest report for 2 months. And the only reason they released it was because of pressure from this opposition in question period that they finally said that they were going to release this report. But the truly shocking element here, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that this Premier, while sitting on 2 extremely damaging reports, the earlier BDO report from 2018 and the Ernst & Young report, which disclosed and exposed all the financial management that was taking place at BC Housing under the Premier's watch while he was Minister responsible, and particularly the mismanagement that was taking place at their largest housing provider, Atira, he still felt it was appropriate to increase the funding by 335% to that housing organization. That is fascinating to me. But yesterday, I heard the Premier say that he, as he tried to shift blame entirely from his own failures, the Premier astonishingly had the audacity to claim in this House, and I quote, he was concerned about the spike in funding at Atira. End of quote. Well, that is really interesting, given that he was the minister that brought it forward to Treasury Board and asked for that extra $90 million for Atira. This shocking misrepresentation, evasion, blame shifting by this Premier exemplifies what is going on and why we have not got housing for the society's most vulnerable. No wonder they haven't come close to meeting their housing targets. If not this Premier, then who is responsible for the massive run-up in funding to Atira and the gross mismanagement that was outlined in that report? Who is responsible?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. There's so much misinformation in there, I don't know where to start. I'll start with...
Members. Members, both sides. Members. Question was asked. Now let's hear the answer, please. Let's be respectful to each other.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. First, I'll start with releasing the report. When the report was made available to me, immediately upon reading it, I believed that it was...
Members, it's not very cute when you keep interrupting, please. Please, both sides.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Upon receiving the report, I was very disturbed by the findings. I made sure immediately that staff stopped any additional funding that may be going to Atira. I then expressed to my team, to the legal team that was advising me, that I believed that this should be released to the public because it's in the public interest. I was advised that in order to do so, that I must inform the entities named in the report and give them sufficient time to make representations. The deadline was April 25th for representations. Then we, upon a request, extended that to April 28th. After that, I reviewed the representations and made the decision last week that I still believe that the report should be made available to the public without any redaction, Honourable Speaker. Those are the steps we took. That's the level of transparency that we want to ensure. Now, the member talks about the $90 million. I think it's important to note that we were in the middle of a pandemic. We had people who had extreme needs. I know that people want to forget about that time, and certainly I think it's easier to forget about that time, but we had people who needed supports. And so we increased the amount of investments to ensure that people had housing, people had all the types of supports they need. Now, what is fundamentally wrong, Honourable Speaker, is with that support that was provided, that BC Housing, under the direction of the former CEO, was directing funds more to his partners, not-for-profit, and not to other not-for-profits. Honourable Speaker, that is fundamentally wrong. But we're not going to apologize for making additional investments to support the most vulnerable people in the middle of a pandemic.
Member for Abbotsford West.
Mr. Speaker, I have a copy of a letter dated May the 4th of this year, signed by the present chair of BC Housing and sent to Atira. It includes a series of demands. Included in those demands is a demand for what they term leadership renewal. My question to the Premier is, clearly the letter was sent on orders from the government. Is the Premier demanding that Atira fire executives? If so, which ones? And if so, why?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The letter was sent from the chair of BC Housing, who is a man of integrity, who served here as the Deputy Attorney General under the opposition when they were in government. He followed up on a conversation that he had with the chair of Atera regarding the concerns that were raised in the report. My view is certainly that in order for them to continue to serve the public in a good way and serve the most vulnerable people, that they take the actions that are required to ensure the public has confidence that they can continue to do so, Honourable Speaker. And certainly I suspect that's what the chair conveyed to the chair of Atera.
Member for Abbotsford West, supplemental.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. Quite frankly, in the aftermath of the report that has been tabled, I would have thought that the Minister, the Premier, the government would be in a position to provide more certain information than I'm guessing. It's pretty clear that orders were given to send this letter to Atera. The response, however, is interesting. I presume the Premier and the Minister are aware of the response, dated May the 5th from Atera to BC Housing. You call for, quote, leadership renewal, which we understand to be a euphemism for terminating one or more senior executives. We decline to do so at this time, and we continue to have confidence in our executive team. So the Premier, who wants to maintain this facade that he was a hapless victim, unaware of all of these shenanigans that were taking place, has now sent a letter via BC Housing saying, I want you to fire someone. And the agencies he sent it to have said, no. So what's the Premier going to do about it?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Surely the member knows that they're an independent organization, arm's length away from government. Decisions made about their leadership in the end, decisions made by them ultimately in the end will be made by their board. Certainly, I've already made it clear that I'm of the opinion that changes need to happen there. It can't be business as usual, Honourable Speaker. It cannot be business as usual. Now, the letter the member refers to also mentioned that the CEO hadn't read the report, that only their board chair had read the report. That's unacceptable, given the severity of the findings that the CEO and the other board members hadn't read the report, yet that was a position they've taken, I think is very troubling. But that being said, Honourable Speaker, the decisions made by the board around their leadership has got to be made by them. What we are going to be doing is taking the actions that we need to do. We're starting immediately inspections on all of Atera sites. We're freezing all new additional fundings that are going to Atera. We're asking for an independent government representative to keep an eye on some of the actions that they'll be taking. Honourable Speaker, these are the steps that we can take within the realms of what we have, and we're going to continue to urge them to do the right thing.
House Leader of Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked the Minister of Public Safety about independent oversight of the BC Conservation Service. The BC COS website says, quote, conservation officers are highly trained, dedicated individuals responsible for enforcing 33 federal and provincial statutes. They hold special provincial constable status under the Police Act and have unrestricted appointment to enforce acts and statutes and protect the public and preserve the peace, end quote. They dress like police, drive police-like vehicles, use police-like tactics, carry police-like assault rifles, have all the powers under the Police Act, but are not subject to police-like independent oversight and have no constabulary independence. They are directly responsible to the Minister of the Environment. The Minister of Public Safety responded that incidents with weapons should go to the Independent Investigations Office, and issues around toxicity of culture should go to the Public Service Agency. But Section 6 of the Police Act states the Public Service Act does not apply to special provincial constables while in the course of exercising a constabulary duty. So is the Public Service Agency acting like the Police Complaints Commissioner for special constables? When I tried to ask them that question, I got rerouted back to the BC COS Chief and the Ministry of the Environment. My question, Mr. Speaker, is to the Minister of Public Safety. He says his ministry is working on trying to fix this shocking lack of oversight. The Special Committee on Reforming the Police Act raised this issue a year ago, and still nothing. When will he act?
Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I appreciate the question from the member. As I have stated previously in this House and in the estimates process, there are changes coming to the Police Act this fall. There will be the first phase, which will be dealing with governance and accountability, and I'm expecting to table that legislation this fall.
Member supplemental.
It's been a year, Mr. Speaker, of lack of oversight for the BC Conservation Service. The antiquated legislation unleashes the authority of the Minister of the Environment to direct a provincial policing agency, the BC Conservation Service, in environmental investigations. Investigations of serious and potential serious environmental crime like Mount Poly and large-scale forestry non-compliances, Mr. Speaker. To admit the BC COS is a fully functional and unrestricted environmental policing agency, it limits the powers of the Public Service Agency and the BC General Employees Union, restricting the BC NDP's ability to access information or influence investigations over environmental crimes. The provincial government would be subject to internal policing reviews of environmental decisions under both the provincial offence provision and perhaps the Criminal Code of Canada. We're starting to see why it's taken a year for this to happen. Constabulary independence should be enforced, and as a cardinal principle of our democracy and rule of law, Mr. Speaker, just as the Minister of Public Safety reminds me often in this House about the rule of law. Conservation officers who put their lives on the line every day must know that they have a safe place to do their police work on environmental matters, and currently they do not. My question is again, through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Public Safety. The Police Act is his responsibility. He's currently allowing this heavily armed service with all the powers of police, but no independent oversight, to be under the direct control of his colleague, the Minister of the Environment. Serious crimes need investigation, and his loitering is threatening the safety of the public and the people who do his work. Does he support the status quo?
Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. And there's a lot in that question. I will answer it this way. First off, we have a very professional conservation service in the province of British Columbia. We have a very professional conservation service in the province of British Columbia, composed of men and women who do their job and they effectively, and they take that job seriously. As I outlined to the member during estimates, that if there was an issue, for example, with a firearm, the Independent Investigations Office has every ability to investigate, which they would. At the same time, I have also outlined that there are changes coming in terms of the Police Act on the work, in part of the work of the All-Party Committee. And I can tell a member, as I said in estimates, there has been a significant amount of work underway on those changes in terms of consultation, not only with stakeholders, Indigenous nations, but communities right across the province, Honourable Member. And a key part of those changes that I said are coming in the fall deal with issues of governance and accountability, which includes oversight. So Honourable Speaker, the work has been underway. It has been thorough. There are changes coming in the fall. I can tell the member that we have a very professional conservation officers in this province, and they do an amazing job.
Member for West Vancouver, Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The draft BDO report, which first identified mismanagement at Atira, was completed in November of 2018. That was 5 years ago, Mr. Speaker. Page 6 of the BDO report states very clearly that this was based on a review of Atira's 2018 financial statements. This draft report was then systematically concealed both by the Premier in his capacity as Minister of Housing and his predecessor, until a whistleblower leaked that report just this last year. So, Mr. Speaker, why did the Premier not only neglect to take corrective action, but also increase Atira funding and deliberately bury the BDO report?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And the statement the member made is false. The decision around the BDO report was made by the board, which then when the Premier became the Premier, he changed the board. It wasn't a decision made by the minister. It wasn't brought to the minister at the time that was responsible. And then as far as the $90 million, I mean, I've already answered that question, which is the $90 million additional funding was about supporting the most vulnerable people through the pandemic. We did make historic investments through the pandemic to support people, to support businesses. Honourable Speaker, that's why we've come out of the pandemic in a better way than many other jurisdictions around the world, Honourable Speaker. The decision wasn't made to give $90 million to Atera. The decision was made to give additional dollars in the portfolio to support the most vulnerable people. Now, do I agree with the member that it was inappropriate for the former CEO of BC Housing to direct award dollars to Atera where his partner is a CEO? Yes, I disagree with that. That's not the way things should be done. Clearly they went to... It's clear in the report that they went to great extent to not only direct award dollars to Atera, but also to hide it from others on the board, hide it from some of their colleagues, Honourable Speaker, and that type of behaviour is unacceptable.
Member for Prince George Valemount.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And by any measure, this minister can stand up and he can try to duck and dodge all he wants, but by any measure, this is a damning report. And all of the evidence, all of it, points to a premier who knew about significant mismanagement and he failed to act. That's what the public understands. Let's look at page 7 of the report, because what it reveals is that under this Premier's watch, and I quote, BC's housing financial reviews of Atera have been substantially delayed. The most recent completed financial review was for fiscal year 2020, and it was finalized in August of 2022, end quote. So instead of ensuring that financial reviews were completed, what did the Premier do in his role as the housing minister? He made Treasury Board submissions, knowing all about the mismanagement. And what did he do? He secured an additional $90 million for Atera. Wow. So maybe the Premier could answer this question. Why on earth did he triple Atera's funding without any completed financial reviews since 2020?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. When the Premier saw something inappropriate, he took action, Honourable Speaker. When he saw something inappropriate, he took action, Honourable Speaker. The first report on EY did a review of BC Housing.
Members, please. Members. Mr.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. When he first saw that there was something inappropriate there, when he was shown text messages of the former CEO encouraging staff to award direct contracts to Atera, he brought in the changes in EB. He replaced the board because he knew that there's going to be more capacity needed there to make the transformational changes that need to happen, Honourable Speaker. And if the member, the members are appalled that the former CEO took steps to urge staff to direct award money to Atera. We're all with them. We think that's inappropriate. That's wrong, Honourable Speaker. That's why we released the report as the way we have done, Honourable Speaker. Now, I also share with the member the concern that there was a culture that was established at BC Housing where if Atera came for dollars, that they were given dollars to help them with cash flow and other issues, Honourable Speaker. That's wrong. Again, findings in this report we made public. Honourable Speaker, for the members to suggest that all of a sudden this all happened, 2012 there's reports when they were in government where people were suggesting that.
Members, come to order, please.
The member says no one believes it. The member across the way was a cabinet minister at the time. Her colleague is reported in the newspaper saying, hey, we've taken all the actions. The relationship started.
Members, please.
The relationship started in 2010, Honourable Speaker. And so, yes, I think that it's fair for people to say how from 2010 to 2012 when the news started, how come action wasn't taken? What I can share with the members is when the Premier saw something inappropriate, he took steps to ensure not only that action was taken, but the report was made public.
Opposition House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, for the minister opposite to frame this as a premier taking action is actually pathetic and it's laughable. It is not borne out by the facts. The fact of the matter is this: the premier has his fingerprints all over this scandal at Atira in BC Housing. And let's just refresh everyone's memories here. It starts with a BDO report being buried by this premier back in 2020, after he became the minister responsible for housing. The public only found out about it because it was leaked by a whistleblower. Then the E&Y review of BC Housing is posted on the government's website over the Canada Day long weekend. Then the premier fires the entire board in June of 2022 and looks in the camera and tells British Columbians, don't worry about anything. There was no wrongdoing whatsoever here. In fact, the premier goes so far as to direct BC Housing, when he was the minister responsible for housing, to actually have BC Housing issue a news release telling British Columbians that all is fine at BC Housing. Then the premier leaves cabinet for his leadership campaign in July of 2022, still with the BDO report being sat on. He then tells, when he comes back to the Executive Council as Premier, he tells CKNW, tells British Columbians through CKNW, that he knows nothing about this report, only to change his tune the very next day where he says, and I quote, "I didn't recognize the report that the reporter was describing to me, but I am familiar with that report now." Oh, how convenient is that? Then he announces that he has secretly launched a second E&Y investigation, this time a forensic audit, but sits on that for 2 months. Throughout this entire period, this premier increases funding at Atira.
Members.
This premier increases funding at Atira to $90 million, over 300%. That's under this premier. But Mr. Speaker, then the premier says, then we find out that all funding has been suspended at Atira, only to then learn. This is back in March. March of this year, we're told all funding is suspended to Atira.
Member will ask question.
And now we're told that actually there are still projects that are being funded for Atira. Mr. Speaker, this is an absolute and complete mess, and it's characteristic of how this premier does business: evasion, blame, finger pointing, and deception. The question is this: how is it that nobody, not least of which the premier, how is it that nobody has stood up and been accountable for the consequences of this scandal, which has happened under the premier's law?
Let's hear the answer, please. No interruptions.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. The Premier saw something inappropriate and he took action, Honourable Speaker. He didn't rip pages out of an ICBC report. No. When he saw something inappropriate, he saw changes needed, he did it, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, he didn't triple delete. He didn't triple delete emails. He didn't triple delete text messages, Honourable Speaker. He didn't do that, Honourable Speaker. Everything the Premier has touched, he has made sure that there's full transparency. ICBC, BC Lottery Corporation, the changes around money laundering, Honourable Speaker. What we saw was something inappropriate. We took action, Honourable Speaker. We made the report public.
Members.
We made the report public for the first time using Freedom of Information Act, unredacted to the public, Honourable Speaker. That's the level of transparency that we do on this side of the House.
The bell ends the question period. Member for Surrey Panorama.
Honourable Speaker, I am pleased to present the second report of the Select Standing Committee on Children and Youth for the fourth session of the 42nd Parliament, titled Annual Report 2022-23. I move that the report be taken as read and received.
Members, the question is that the report be taken as read and received. All those in favour indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member?
Honourable Speaker, I ask leave of the House to move a motion to adopt the report.
Is leave granted?
Aye.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move that the report be adopted, and in doing so, I would like to make some brief comments. As members are aware, the Select Standing Committee on Children and Youth works to foster greater awareness and understanding of the child and youth serving system. The committee also provides a public forum for discussion of the reports issued by the representative for children and youth. Our annual report summarizes the committee's work in 2022-23, during which the committee reviewed the representative's annual report and service plan, plus 3 reports related to funding for Indigenous child welfare, quality care planning, and the mental health of children in care. On behalf of the committee and all members of the Legislative Assembly, I would like to recognize and thank the representative, Dr. Jennifer Charlesworth, and her staff at the office for their ongoing advocacy and work on behalf of children, youth, young adults, and their families across BC. I'd also like to acknowledge the dedicated public servants in various ministries, as well as the community organizations in this sector for the important work that they do in support of children, youth, young adults, and their families in our province. I also want to recognize the staff in the Parliamentary Committee offices and Hansard Services who support our work behind the scenes. I want to express my appreciation to all committee members for the insightful and collaborative contributions and their commitment to supporting the well-being of children, youth, and young adults in BC. There have been a few membership changes in the committee this year, and I want to ensure that I acknowledge the excellent work done by previous members, including the member for Chilliwack Kent, who served as committee of the chair. I would also like to especially recognize the Deputy Chair, the member for Peace River South, for his thoughtful contributions, experience, and leadership on this committee. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
For Caribou South. North.
Peace River South.
Peace River South.
Thank you. It all has a nice ring to it. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add a few comments, but I'll echo basically everything that the member from Surrey Panorama just said. The same thank yous. The committee operates obviously in a nonpartisan way, working together to try to make things better for our children and youth in the province of British Columbia. But that wouldn't happen without the expertise of Dr. Charlesworth and her staff as the representative's office, the ministry staff, everybody who's contributed over the last year to help the committee and to guide the committee to make sure we're making the best decisions possible and having the accountability going forward to, again, make sure we're making good decisions for the people of British Columbia. I want to thank Karn and everybody as well in the Clerk of Committee's office and all past and present members of this committee. We've been working very well, very collaboratively, trying to make good decisions, working together for our children and youth. So again, thank you to the chair who's been guiding us through that and everybody who's been involved for the last year. Pleased to see this report here and looking forward to the next year of trying to do good work for our children and youth in the province of British Columbia. Thank you.
Thank you, member for Peace River South. The question is adoption of the report. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Government House Leader. Sorry. Member for Caribou North.
Present a petition today signed by 325 residents of Kersley and surrounding area requesting the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to not allow the proposed reactivation of the Roberta Pit gravel pit, which is in the heart of the community and is by Kersley School, for the health, safety of our children, residents, livestock, animals, and the users of the Sister Creek recreational site.
Thank you. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. By leave, I move that notwithstanding any provisions of the standing orders or usual practices of the House, Erica Reid Ginn Judd, and Jason Alsop, who also is known as Gogwees of the Haida Nation, be permitted to address the House from the floor of the House later today.
Is leave granted? Aye. Member, you heard the question. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Government House Leader.
Honourable Speaker, I call third reading of Bill number 18.
Hold it. Madam Clerk.
Orders of the day.
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I call third reading of Bill number 18, Haida Nation Recognition Act.
I invite Erica Reed, Gideon Judd of the Haida Nation to deliver a prayer.
You can all bring yourselves together in heart, mind, and spirit. Satlana gunang eat chaidagas, ahayat singai skaudagi, dunga alang kiltlaga. Chaida tlgai, aisku chang, yachku dangai wagi kilchi ganga. Ahayat chaidaga at digurangai yuanga. Chaida tlgai, aisku chang, naistulyai giu at tlakianang alanga. Dlang wadluchan digithla ngaistel at daguya at dlaida. Satlana gunung eat haidagas, ahayat singai skaudagi dunga dalang kiltlaga. Hawa.
Thank you very much for that beautiful prayer. I invite Jason Goyes, President of the Council of the Haida Nation, to address the House.
Hawa, Honorable Speaker. First, I'd like to acknowledge and extend a Hawa thank you to Elder Shirley Alphonse for the prayer. And also like to acknowledge that we're in the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, and on behalf of the Haida Nation, say Hawa for allowing us to conduct business today here on your traditional lands. Honorable members of the House, it's humbling and a privilege to be here on the floor to speak to you all. As President of the Haida Nation, I come before you with a delegation of the Haida Nation, made up of our hereditary chiefs, members of our Hereditary Chiefs Council, elected representatives of the Council of the Haida Nation, and elected representatives from our village councils of Old Masset, Auklage, and Skidegit, Skagilda. Together we stand before you and represent the Haida Nation, all of our citizens, our good people, and the lands and waters of Haida Gwaii who we speak for. We're here to come together to celebrate and bear witness to the third reading of the Haida Nation Recognition Act. And it's with mixed emotions. It's that we must acknowledge that, it is difficult at times to confront the history that has led us all here today. So we do come to you here to celebrate, but here to also acknowledge the past and the work and the healing that we're doing together. Our people succumbed to the smallpox epidemics and other diseases that had spread, with the coming of Europeans and others into these lands. And that was spread and left unchecked and had a devastating impact on our people and our culture, and in many ways helped, lay the path for colonial government to come and impose the jurisdiction on our lands, on our territories. Our thousands were reduced to hundreds, and that power that our nation, our people, were so well known for was reduced to handfuls of clans and survivors, of people who were forced to move into a survival mode to carry on what was left and pick up the pieces. Despite that, our chiefs, our people showed resilience and perseverance and found ways to navigate the colonial imposition, found ways to resist, found ways to carry on the teachings and the history of the land and of our ancestors, our Kunisi. So Hawa Gitanjat for opening us in the Haida language and bringing our ancestors into the room here with us today. After the spread of smallpox, our chiefs had an audience with Governor Douglas in 1863, almost 160 years ago. And there's some descendants of those chiefs are with us here today. And they found a way, again, to navigate all the barriers and all of the challenges and remain intact our inherent title and rights, and really regroup as a people, as communities, as a nation. And when BC, and survive the violence and the gunboat diplomacy of the day, and when BC became a part of Canada, and more policies and different acts came into play that were designed to try to eliminate us, to assimilate us, and to disconnect us from our lands, from our territories, from the teachings, from our culture. Our people once again found a way to pass on the history and the knowledge that we bring forth with us today. So even though, despite being prevented from gathering to bring forward our land claims, despite not being able to practice our potlatch system, our traditional legal system, despite the reserves that we were placed on and unable to exercise our rights, and others who had come to exploit our lands, we carried on. We continued to stay strong, stay together, and stay as one nation. In 1913, when the Royal Commission came to Haida Gwaii, once again our people had an audience in both of our communities, in Old Masset and Skidegate, and they once again expressed eloquently our position that we had never surrendered, ceded, we never signed a treaty, had never been defeated in war, that we'd never given up our lands, and that we are still the rightful heirs and title holders to all of Haida territory. And they communicated the beautiful way that in that time that we spoke as one. We'd thrown all of the territory into one lot or into the common bowl. And that's how I speak to you today, to represent all of the Haida Nation. They not only expressed their concerns about the land and the reserves and the system that was imposed, they also were concerned about the forests and the fish and the environment. But at the same time, they also expressed very beautifully their desire to live in peace and harmony with those who have come to settle in our territory, who had become friends and neighbors, and to continue to seek peace and contentment in our own lands. And that position's remained throughout the years and is the same spirit we come to you today. In 1974, unable again to resolve the land question, our people formed the Council of the Haida Nation, our national government that this act formally recognizes here today, brings together all Haida citizens, all people of Haida ancestry are recognized as Haida citizens, all of our clans, our villages, all under one united nation, our elected and hereditary leadership at the national level, at the village level, in our traditional system. So again, we've been for many years working at trying to settle the land question, and our people have continued to stand up through our own system to protect the Gust, later Guayhanas, which again, took a lot of good people working together, a lot of allies, a lot of support in government. And they also, again, at that time said, we're doing it for both sides. We're doing it for the future and current generations of Haida, of British Columbians and Canadians. And we found innovative and creative ways to seek common ground, find ways to work together, to look after things, to look after Haida Gwaii. Of course, we've also had to resort to the courts, and the Haida case, helped develop the duty to consult and accommodate and uphold the honor of the Crown. We've done amazing work together in land use planning with our neighbors, provincial government, and forged managing together through the Kunstigu Kunstiya protocol, which in the Haida language means the beginning or the beginning of the beginning. And now we're over 10 years, 12, 13 years into that arrangement. We're taking the next step from that humble beginning. So together, we've been able to give back the name Queen Charlotte Islands and restore the rightful name of Haida Gwaii, protect over 51% of Haida Gwaii, and find ways to work together to manage for the balance of a sustainable islands economy and to look after the lands and the waters. In 2021, we reached another historic milestone together, BC and Canada and the Haida Nation, in signing the Gaigasta Kwaslastaya Reconciliation Framework Agreement, where today is an expression of following up on implementing the recognition of the Council of the Haida Nation as the government of the Haida Nation. And we're excited to be here with you to celebrate and witness. And, it's really taken a lot of people working together, good people working together to make things right. And in the Haida language, we say, "Gut at talang skongolcha tulyasta." Good people working together to make things right. And that's how we see this process of reconciliation. And so we're here today to celebrate, to show a way forward that is not to be feared, but to bring hope, that we can bring hope to each other, to others, to show an example that Indigenous title and rights to self-governance and self-determination and British Columbia and Canadian systems can find a way to interact and interface in a respectful way and to move forth based on that principle of respect, yakudang, with integrity, with dignity, and move forward and heal a system. That there's good people, and we're all working to heal a system that needs all of us bringing our collective experiences and wisdoms to the table to do so. And so that's what we're here for, again, to celebrate and witness this good work of good people working together to show that together we can come together and heal a system for this post-colonial era and find a path to peaceful coexistence. Hawa.
Thank you. On behalf of all members of the Legislative Assembly, please accept our sincere appreciation for addressing the House today. And we are very honored that you were able to attend today's proceeding. Thank you so much. Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and through you, thank you so much, Gagwis, for your words of wisdom. I know, Mr. Speaker, it's unusual for a minister at this point in our legislative process to have the opportunity to speak even briefly, so I beg your indulgence in doing so because, Mr. Speaker, today is truly an historic day for the province of British Columbia. Today is a first step in our commitment to recognize Haida governance as determined and recognized by the Haida Nation. Mr. Speaker, we didn't get here overnight. It's the result of a strong relationship that our province has developed with the Council of the Haida Nation. This legislation was drafted jointly every step of the way. It's tangible evidence of a progressive approach to reconciliation. The legislation, if approved by this House today, will be the first time in our history that the province would provide formal legal recognition of an Indigenous governing body outside the implementation of a modern treaty. It is And so, Mr. Speaker, it is with immense joy that we come together and take this incremental step in partnership today. I want to thank the House for allowing me these brief comments. I'll have much more to say after our business in this House is complete. Thank you so much.
Member for Vancouver-Langara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and certainly on behalf
Member, hold it. Minister to move third reading of the bill.
Speaker, I do, of course, move third reading of the bill.
Thank you. Member for Vancouver-Langara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and on behalf of the Leader of the Official Opposition and all members of the Official Opposition, I certainly would like to thank Gagwis for his very powerful words of reflection. They're very, very meaningful to all members of this House. And as we spoke in the hallway with the delegation, with your elders, with your hereditary chiefs and elected representatives of the Haida Nation here today, you've traveled a long way to witness this remarkable occasion. And I appreciate you sharing the burdens of the nation that your elders, your ancestors have carried for so long. It's been a long journey to get to this point. But as you know, over successive governments, the journey to reconciliation, the recognition that you spoke of beginnings, over 10 to 13 years ago in 2010, was an important measure. There's been further measures with the reconciliation agreement, and we certainly support the next steps with the formal recognition of the Haida Nation under this bill, and the hope that the journey will continue in a very good way, in a shorter way, to get to a better place with your nation, to heal all that has happened, and to recognize that you are an example to other nations in this land. Not just in terms of the journey through the courts, but the journey through leadership, to support of your peoples, to doing what's right for your peoples, to standing up for what's right, but recognizing that through successive governments, we can progress this to a better place. And that hope is certainly what we share with you. So thank you again for making the journey to be with us today, to witness this, and I hope that we'll continue down a good path to reconciliation with your nation.
House Leader, third party.
Escusiam. Iguis, hereditary and elected chiefs, elders, matriarchs, Hanaptanitsne, Chisle Seneth Kusatnich. My name is Hanap from the Kusatnich territory. Just want to say a brief few words here and thank you for your powerful statements in the legislative chamber here today. I just want to say that I'm very grateful for the Haida Nation. And I raise my hands to you. I raise my hands to your past leaders, your current leaders, and I raise my hands to your future leaders who have already got on the record here. The political and legal work that has been done on behalf of all Indigenous people across this country by the Haida is inexplicable. It's hard to explain the impact that your work has done for all of us, for all our relatives. And with that, I raise my hands in immense gratitude to you. You are indeed here today as a result of that incredible and powerful display of patience, long-suffering, and leadership. I often talk about how some of the most remarkable leaders in this country are leaders of Indigenous communities, often doing more with the least. And Iguis, your statements here today demonstrated a real grounding and sense of purpose, and I think that that's what we see in our Indigenous leaders, and I really thank you for your words. I raise my hands in gratitude to all the Haida, and I look forward to, as my colleagues have said, working alongside you nation to nation in order to build a better province. And this is indeed a day of celebration for the Haida people and the Haida Nation, but it is also a day of celebration for the province of British Columbia as we demonstrate of the work that we've done here in terms of reconciliation through the Declaration Act and the many steps that have been taken, a maturation of this institution. And I am so grateful to be here during this process, and I'm so grateful that you're here with us. And with that, I just take my seat in Haiscasiem. Thank you.
Seeing no further speakers, members, the question is third reading of the bill number 18, Haida Nation Recognition Act. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Bill 18 has been read third time and has passed. Congratulations. I again want to say thank you on behalf of all members for being here today and be part of these ceremonies. And I really sincerely say thank you. We are very grateful. Thank you very much for coming. Leader.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. And with that, I move the House now adjourn.
Members, you heard the question. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. This House stands adjourned until 1:30 p.m. today.